All right, welcome everyone to today's session. So just having a look at the attendance list populating, just giving everyone sort of 10 more seconds to sign on, and we'll make a start. All right, so welcome everyone to this Microsoft Teams webinar. Wherever you are in the country, I hope that you're all well. And I know we're having absolutely lovely weather, which is it's great on the one hand, but it's a shame that we're on lockdown at the moment. But if you think about it, I'm pretty sure that if we were all out at work, living our day-to-day lives, it would probably be raining and there'd probably be talk of snow and it would be freezing cold. So you can't have it all, unfortunately. But I really, really, really hope everyone is well and in the sunshine wherever they are. So welcome to this session. Just to take you through a few things before we begin. So my name is Dan Woloszczuk. I'm an IT trainer. That is what I looked like a couple of weeks ago at the start of the lockdown. And I haven't visited a barber or had a shave or anything since. So unfortunately, if you can imagine my beard being much longer and my hair being much longer, that's what I look like right now. I work for a training company called Escala, so we're delivering this session to you today. In the chat of this webinar, you've also got my colleague, friend, and Teams expert, Lisa, who will be helping to answer any questions that you may have throughout today's session. So shortly, I'll talk about the ways that you can interact with today's session. But if you ask any questions into the chat box at any time, as we've got lots and lots and lots of people in this session, you can imagine there's no way that I could handle all the amount of questions myself. So Lisa is very, very kindly helping us out, and she will share her team's expertise and answer as many questions as she can within the chat as well. So in terms of the webinar itself, don't worry too much if you write lots of questions and I don't answer all of them throughout the session, or Lisa doesn't get a chance to answer them all throughout the session. At the very end of the session, we'll stick around for sort of 5-10 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer, depending on the amount of questions, and we'll look to answer as many questions as we possibly can. So if we don't do it throughout the webinar, we'll try our best to answer them at the end of the webinar, and we'll scroll back through some of the questions as well. You can ask questions in a whole number of ways. So at the end of the session, if you want to unmute your microphone and speak to me, you're more than welcome to. But like I've been saying, there should be a chat box available to you. And if you click into there, you can type questions into the chat as well. You can also raise your hand by your name to let me know that you have a question. Ideally, if you could do this sort of closer to the end of the session, so at the end, once we've gone through all the content, we can then go through some questions. That'd be very much appreciated. You have all been put on mute for the duration of the session, only because when there's loads and loads of people on an online course, I'm sure you've all experienced this before, maybe not in a webinar, but probably if you've done a group chat on your phone or on WhatsApp or anything like that, when loads of people talk at the same time through any sort of microphone, either it goes quiet on my end or I just get lots and lots and lots of sort of digital sounds, and there's no way to kind of decipher anything that's been said. So where we've got lots and lots and lots of people, I'd appreciate if you do have any questions, please type them into the chat box, or alternatively, raise the hand, and at the end of the session, I'll come to you all one by one and answer your questions that way. This webinar is being recorded, so we do that so that we can send you a copy of the recording after the session itself. So you will receive an email a little bit later on, and there are a few places that you can log on to, share ideas, download information, and you will get a copy of the recording of this session as well. I'll also do a poll very shortly, so I'll ask you a question, and on your screen you'll be able to click one of the responses, so that I can get a good feel of who we've got in the room and what we're doing with today's session. So I'll put that out there very shortly. Also, at the very end of the session, once you log off, as you log off, it will ask you to fill out a very, very quick feedback survey. It's only a couple of questions. It should take you no more than about 2-3 minutes max. And we'd really, really, really appreciate if you could take the time to do that. So as you do log out at the very end, if you have got a minute, then it'd be greatly appreciated if you could fill out the few feedback questions that we ask. And also in that email, like I was mentioning earlier, not only will we give you a link to the recording, we'll also give you a link to a quick reference guide. So you'll have some notes and information on all the bits and pieces that we're covering in today's course. So just in terms of what we're going to look at today, so for the next hour or so, we're going to have a look at an introduction into Microsoft Teams. So looking at working across multiple teams, looking at a chat Teams as a chat-based workspace. So you'll see there's plenty of opportunity to not only send instant messages to team members or to individuals, or even to make a call. There's plenty of ways that you can communicate within Teams. We'll also have a look at online meetings, so how you can host a meeting via Teams or schedule a meeting as well. We'll have a look at things like desktop sharing. So within a Teams meeting, just like kind of what I'm doing right now, I'm sharing my desktop with you so that you can see this PowerPoint presentation. But within Teams, you could do the same thing, and you can share whatever you're looking at or one of the applications that you've got open with colleagues or people that are in that meeting. We'll have a look at how it integrates with other Office 365 applications. So a really good way to think of Microsoft Teams is it's like a hub or like a sort of home space for all of your Microsoft Office 365. So you'll find that for things like, let's say I wanted to work on a Word document with some colleagues, I could sign into Office 365. I could locate that document on SharePoint or in OneDrive, and I could then invite colleagues to work with it, work on it with me that way. But alternatively, if I want to work on a document or a spreadsheet or something with my team members, you'll see today how easy it is to just add it into your team as one of the available files. And at almost any point, you can all click onto the file, open it, work on it together, collaborate. It's absolutely fantastic. So you'll see how well it integrates with everything else. And I also want to give you a very quick understanding of something called Planner. And Planner is really, really, really cool. So if you were planning perhaps an event or a project or even a party, you can use it for absolutely anything. Planner is a really good way to create tasks within teams, assign team members to them, share them with other team members, and also to monitor the progress of it. So you'll see there's a really cool dashboard within Planner as well that will show you things like who's working on what task and how many tasks are left to be completed and how many have been completed, and so on. And like I was also saying, at the end of the session, we'll stick around for a bit of time, so sort of 15-20 minutes, and we'll answer any additional questions or any of the questions that we didn't get a chance to get through during the session itself. So what we're going to end up looking at, sorry, let me just go to the next slide. So the benefit of Microsoft Teams, and hopefully what you'll see today in this session, is that productivity gains and enriched communication. So it's a very, very quick way to work on things together, but also to communicate with people or with colleagues and people within your teams. It's very, very, very easy to use as well. So you'll see that it's very easy to navigate and find things within Teams. You can also add third-party tools into your channels. So unfortunately, because we've only got an hour, there's to go through all this content, I can't show you everything that Teams does. It does a lot of things. It has a lot of features, but you'll see that there's all sorts of things that you can integrate into Teams. So even if maybe your team or your department has their own Twitter, You can also integrate Twitter into your Teams and websites and all sorts of third-party applications. I'll show you a list of them a little bit later. But yeah, loads and loads and loads of fantastic features. You'll see that it's a seamless move into a digital workspace. So like I was saying earlier, where it's a hub or like a central workspace for all of your work, it's a really, really, really easy thing to begin using because everything's easy to find, it's easy to navigate, and everything is there. The only sort of con of Teams, if we're thinking about all of those as being pros, is that it's lots of similar Microsoft tools do the same thing. But think of this as being one tool that centralizes all those tools. So yes, I could share a Word document by going into OneDrive, by going through SharePoint. I could get contact my colleagues by emailing them. I could schedule things into Outlook. I could work on spreadsheets separately in Excel and save them into a shared space. But instead of doing all of those things individually, we could do all of that together within Teams. And to be completely honest with you, it's actually much easier to do in Teams than it is to do all those things individually. So just before we go into Teams itself and have a look at Teams, very quickly, I just want to get a feel for your knowledge in Teams, or how much Teams exposure have you had up until this point. So I'm just going to open a poll on the screen. And if you are able to answer that question, that would be absolutely fantastic. So let me know how you would describe your current knowledge of Microsoft Teams. You know, maybe it's something that you've had on your computer, but just haven't really had to use it yet because, you know, lots of people, they work in Teams in an office and you sit next to each other. So it could be that instead of using Teams, you've just been communicating by speaking. It could be that you've used Teams a lot. I don't know, but please let me know now. So just going to give you sort of 30 seconds to choose one of the answers, and then we'll have a look at some of those results. All right, so just 10 more seconds. Please make sure that you've chosen a response. All right, so just going to close this poll now. So let's see. I can see that the results of the poll, which I'll just share with you now, we can see that the majority of our audience today has little knowledge of Teams or no knowledge of Teams. And we've got a few people that have got a fair knowledge of Teams, a good knowledge of Teams, and have probably come across it before. So regardless of your current knowledge of Teams, you should all hopefully find something useful in today's session. And I hope more than anything, you see how easy Teams is to use and how incredibly useful it is as well. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight into Microsoft Teams. And just to let you know, I'm going to be showing you the desktop application of Teams. So what we would call the full computer version of it. But you'll find that you can also sign into Teams via Office 365. So if you didn't download Teams onto your computer, you can simply go to office.com, and using your work account, if you were to sign in, you'd be able to log on to Teams and Outlook and everything there because it's part of Office 365. And you'll find that if you log onto it via the online, via the web browser, it will always prompt you, do you want to download the desktop version onto your computer? It's totally down to you. To be really, really, really honest with you, there's not really much difference between them. So the online version, I would say, does about 95% of what the desktop version does. It's more so the Microsoft Office applications themselves, things like Word and Excel. You know, if you've ever used Outlook or Excel or Word online, you've probably noticed that it's got a lot of features missing, and the full desktop applications are the ones that have loads and loads and loads of functionality and all the features that we're used to. Teams, on the other hand, very, very similar, not really much difference between either of them. And there's also a mobile phone app available as well. So that's really fantastic for taking meetings and things on the move. So if you've got a Teams meeting scheduled, you can imagine, for me being an IT trainer, I travel around the country quite a lot. And sometimes I just attend meetings on my phone while I'm sitting on a train, instead of, getting out my laptop, looking for somewhere to plug it in, trying to get an internet connection. Nowadays your smartphones have internet almost 24/7, and you can also download a Teams app and use it through the phone. It's really, really, really cool. Loads of ways to use Teams. But anyway, I'm going to be showing you the desktop application. So I'm just going to once again share my screen with you. So let me just have a look at the audience view so I can see you can all still see the presentation. So I'm just going to switch into Microsoft Teams. Okay, so this is Microsoft Teams. So having a look at the screen, your navigation area, or the way that you click through all the different parts of Teams, is this bar on the very, very, very left-hand side. So just to briefly kind of show you a few of these areas, the area I'm on at the moment is the Teams section. So within here, it lists all the teams that I'm a member of. And then within those teams, it lists the channels. So I can see that this Project X launch team has a general, customer connections, design, digital assets, and a social media channel. And similarly, HR Task Force has some channels, marketing has some channels, and sales has some channels as well. If I go back to the left-hand side, at the very, very top left, you've got an activity section. So within activity, think of this as notifications. This will just notify you of things that are going on in your teams. So where I've been in contact with one of my colleagues, Jane, can see where Jane has replied to me. Perhaps Jane has reacted to one of my posts. It's very, very, very similar to social media. So you can like things. We'll look at how to do all this stuff shortly. But yeah, you can like things, you can react to each other's posts. And also, when you log on to it, it lets you know what's been going on in your teams. I've also got a chat area. So the chat area is where I'm able to find colleagues and have one-on-one conversations with them. Alternatively, if you have a look in the right top right corner as well, I've also got options to audio call these people. I can also share my screen as well. When you guys come to use Teams, so just a bit of extra information. When you come to use Teams, based on what your job role is, you may not have all of this functionality. So if you can imagine, being a trainer, I get to deliver Teams and Office 365 training at lots of different organizations, and some organizations where people work in roles that they deal with sensitive information, things like personal information and things that we really shouldn't be sharing with others. Sometimes your IT administrators will disable things like being able to share your screen. So in the event that you don't have something like screen sharing, I would say just get in contact with your IT department, but also think about, normally it's just to do with you work with sensitive data, and ideally you don't want that data to be shared. But anyway, just focusing on chat for a moment, think of chat being very, very similar to WhatsApp. So very much like WhatsApp, I can find individuals, I can look into my contacts list, I can also filter the list as well. I can talk with people, we can send instant messages, and also you can create groups as well. So in the very, very top right corner, I can create new groups within here, and I could chat to maybe 3 or 4 people at one time. The Teams area on the left-hand side is what we were originally clicked into a couple of minutes ago. So this is where we're going to have our teams and all our interactivity with our teams. We've also got a calendar area. So the calendar area is linked to your Microsoft Outlook because it's all one account, effectively. So you'll find that anything that you schedule into your Teams calendar will also go into your Outlook calendar. It may look like I'm not very busy in this calendar, but I'm just using a training account today, or a test account if you like. If I was using my actual Teams that I use, then I would be violating GDPR, and I'd probably, unfortunately, share a lot of information that I shouldn't do. So for the purpose of training, I'm just using a training account. So there is no Outlook for our training person. So you can see the only thing in here at the moment is this Teams webinar, but this will sync with your Microsoft Outlook. I've got a calls area as well where I can find people, I can create contact lists, and I can message them that way. And I've also got a files section as well, which at the moment is a little bit empty, but we'll add some things into that as well. And then you've also got these three dots where you can search and find things within Teams. And you've also got a search bar at the very, very top, but we'll come back to those a little bit later. Now, just to go back to Teams on the left-hand side for a moment, within Teams, so like I was saying, a team is listed on the left-hand side, and within Teams you have channels. Now, not everyone will be able to create a team, and just a sort of general tip as well, if you think about it, even though you might be creating a team and then creating channels within that team, in a lot of organizations, IT administrators tend to take the responsibility of creating the teams for you, and then you're able to create channels. The reason for this is because every one of these teams technically needs a digital space somewhere to save the information that's been created in it. So as you all probably know, within Microsoft Office 365, your kind of big company library, your cloud-based library, is called SharePoint. So every time a team is created, a SharePoint site, that's just what they call them, but just think of it as like a save space within SharePoint, is where another team is created. If everyone within the organization was creating a team, then you'd find that you'd end up with hundreds of thousands of teams that people might use for a couple of days and then start using another one. And it would just clog up the SharePoint library with lots and lots and lots and lots of redundant teams. So therefore, you may find that the teams will be created for you. However, you'll be able to create the channels within those teams. Now, having a look on the left-hand side, if we take this HR task force team as an example, within the general channel, we can see over here on the right-hand side, it displays what's currently in this channel. So along the very top, we've got the different tabs available within this specific channel. So you can see that there's a posts tab within this channel, and just kind of scrolling up and down through this, you can see again, it looks very, very much like a social media area where you can post messages. You can see that I can like those messages and react to them and so on. And we can start a conversation, we can mention people, and we've got loads of different options along the bottom, which we'll explore shortly. I've also got a files section along the very top. So within files, any files that any one of the team members within this team throws into the team will be listed up here. So I can see that a couple of weeks ago, Jane added a Word document, offer of employment. I could click into this document and start using it as I'm a member of this team. But again, that's something we'll cover very, very shortly. There's also this area called Wiki at the very top. Don't think of Wiki as Wikipedia. Wiki is more just kind of like a place to leave notes and important information for each other. So you can see that within this HR task force channel. If we had a new employee join our team, you know, we might want them to be able to access information that we use regularly really easily. So by adding them to the team, we might just have information here on things like, you know, hello and welcome to the team. We might also have some logging in information as well, and you can just leave notes here that all the colleagues within that team can access. We've also linked a website as well, so we'll have a look at how to do this a little bit later. But you can see the NHS website, for example, has been linked over here, and I could scroll through this and click on the links and just use it like a regular web page. And we've also got a plan as well. So I'll come back to Planner a little bit later, but you can see that within Planner, I've got these cards where I can create tasks and assign people to them. And if I click onto this section called Charts, I can get this nice dashboard overview of the people that have had tasks assigned to them, how many are in progress, how many are left. I can see that none of these tasks have been started, so nobody's taking this event seriously. But like I was saying, this is all just made up stuff. But yeah, Teams Planner within Teams is a really good way to organize workflow as well, and we'll come back to that one shortly. Now, one more thing before we look at creating and playing with Teams. Very importantly, in the top right corner of your screen, you'll see that it's got your initials. So today I'm being Bob Smithson, and when I click into the top right corner, I can see it displays links to lots of very useful things, so I can zoom in and out. If you find that Teams looks very, very small, you can zoom into it, and you can also zoom out of it as well. I've also got keyboard shortcuts, so anyone who's a fan of keyboard shortcuts can click onto this and get a list of keyboard shortcuts. I've also got the option to sign out of Teams, which, not going to do right now. We've also got the option to set our status. Mine has automatically been set to busy because, at the moment I'm sharing my screen. So whenever you begin sharing a screen, or if you're in a meeting, then it will put you in busy. Because in my calendar, I've blocked out from 1:30 until 3:30, or in Bob's calendar, should I say, I've blocked out that I'm within this Teams webinar. It's now automatically set me as busy, but I could just click into here and I could change or set my status accordingly. And like I was saying, you'll find that if you start a meeting within Teams, it will automatically change your status to things like do not disturb, busy, and if you're sharing your screen. You can also set a message and change your picture. And then you've also got an option for saved. So this icon here, if you recognize it from Microsoft Word, are bookmarks. So one of the things we'll do when we're playing around in our team in a moment is we can also bookmark important messages, because it's very, very easy. If I just click back into the posts section, if I've got a team of maybe 5, 6, 7, or 8 people, and we're posting things in here all day, somebody might post something that's very useful to me, and it can just become lost in that conversation. I'm sure you've all had that experience where someone sent you something on WhatsApp, and then a week later you go back into the group to try and find it, but it's about 300 messages in the past, and it just takes ages to try and scroll and find that message. So we can save or bookmark things within Teams, and this is where we can find all our saved messages. And one other thing very quickly, you've also got a link to settings within here. You'll find that you can change the display. So if you don't like the sort of default light colors of Teams, you can switch to a dark theme, and which looks really cool. And you've also got a high contrast option as well. But what I want to bring your attention to within here is devices, because you'll find that if you're anything like me and you've got 3 or 4 different audio devices plugged into your computer. So I've got a monitor with speakers, I've got the little speakers themselves, I've got this headset that I'm wearing, and I've also got another headset plugged in as well. Anyway, it will come up, sometimes it won't default to the right device, and when I enter a meeting or a call, nobody can hear me, and I'm talking and they don't know that I'm talking, and it's not picking up on my device at all. It's a really, really good idea to kind of just click through this once. It takes a minute. You can also make a test call, and you can test your audio device before you start making any calls or attending any meetings, and it will give you that peace of mind that you know that your audio device will work. Anyway, so just going to come out of here. All right, so let's say I go to our Teams area over here. If I wanted to have a look on the left-hand side, you can see that you've got these 3 dots where you'll always find additional options, and 3 dots in general on Microsoft applications will give you more options. I'll show you how to create a team, although it may be something that you may not need to do, or you may do, who knows. But anyway, in the very bottom left, I'll click on Join or Create a Team. I'm going to just create a team for training. So I could create a team from an existing Office 365 group, but like I was saying, I'm using a training account today, so I don't have any of those within my fictional organization. So if I click on Build a Team from Scratch, you get the opportunity to set a team as a private team. So if you set it as private, you'll need to invite people and give them permission to join. A public team, anyone within the organization can join. So anyone who's got, the same email extension as you and works in the same organization will be able to join. And then you've also got org-wide, which means everyone in your organization automatically joins. So within our organization, we've got an all-staff org-wide one that we use, and then anything that we post within there, for example, company meeting, Christmas party, summer party, chocolate and donuts available downstairs, everyone is able to see that information. But anyway, I'm just going to create a public team for today. So I'm going to give the team a name. So let's call this, we'll call this MS Teams Training, because, very difficult to think of a fictional organization off the top of my head. You can also give the team a description. So we'll put team used for training webinar. There we go. And then I'm just going to click on to create. Now, in a moment, when that team is created, you can see I get a nice thumbs up. I could then add people into that team. So if I wanted to add a colleague into the team, you don't have to do this right now. You can click on skip and you can add teams at any point, team members at any point. But I'm going to add Jane into the team. And I'm also going to add my colleague Wendy into the team as well. Going to click on to add. Can see that it pops up with member by their names, but I can also change their permissions. So not really going to go much into permissions today, but an owner will have a lot more freedom to create and delete things in the team than a member will. But anyway, we'll leave that as member for now. And then I'm going to click on to close. I can see that team has been created on the very left-hand side. And every team will automatically come with a general channel. And within that general channel, you can see along the very, very top, I've got the section for posts, the section for files, and also for the wiki. We've then got a plus button where we can add additional things. So we'll add one or two of these shortly. But just to give you a feel, remember earlier at the very start of the session, I was saying that you can add lots and lots and lots of popular applications. I mean, if I scroll through this, I'm sure you'll recognize a lot of these. So you've got things like, scroll down, we've got YouTube. I'm sure everyone's used YouTube before. You've also got things like Digibook as well. If we go even further, I've got some cool ones I've never heard of, like Pear Deck. That looks pretty cool. Can see launch interactive presentations to engage every student. That looks pretty cool. And if I scroll down a little bit further, you'll see that you've got things like WebEx, Adobe, Evernote, Dynamics, all sorts of things. So it's very, very, very easy to integrate stuff. And we'll look at one or two of these a little bit later. There's also a more apps link, and the internet is a thing that grows on a daily basis. Lots of new stuff available. So kind of watch this space. You'll see there's lots and lots of stuff that they add to it gradually. Now, on the left-hand side, if I wanted to add an additional channel into this team, on the very left-hand side where it tells me MS Teams Training, the name of the team, if I click on the three dots over there, I can see that I've got the option to delete, leave the team, create a link to invite somebody to the team. I can also manage the team as well. If I click onto add channel, I could now create another channel. So maybe something like, I don't know, we might have a channel for party planning. And this is to plan staff parties and events, perhaps. Can see that there's a privacy setting as well. So this is a new feature within Teams. One other thing worth noting is everything I show you today is Teams as it stands right now, but you'll find that on a even on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, or sometimes on a monthly basis, Microsoft update Teams all the time. There's lots and lots of new features that gradually become available. So as a trainer, you find that every couple of months when you go into a different project to train some teams, there's always some new features available. And it's really cool. Microsoft add the features depending on feedback from the world and everyone using it. So, for example, the privacy on channels, this is a relatively new feature that wasn't even here a couple of months ago. So it's quite a new feature within Teams. And it's just based on all the feedback on their website of people asking, how do I make a channel private? How do I make a channel private? And now you've got the option to make a channel private. Basically, any channel that you create within Teams, everyone within that team will have access to that channel. But it could be that within that team, you want to make one of the channels private because, or maybe even two of them, because you need only a few people within that team to have access to it. So in that case, we'd create a private channel and we'd invite those people the same way that I invited them to the team. But anyway, I'm going to leave this one as a standard channel. I'm going to click onto add. And in case you're wondering, how do you know if a channel is private? I mean, you can see over here at the very top left in this Project X launch team, the design has got the padlock next to it, which means that it's a private channel. And I would simply have to click on the three dots, add members, and then invite people to be a member of that channel. All right, so going back to the general tab of this channel, if I wanted to post some information, so I've added Wendy and Jane, so anything I post within here, they'll be able to see. Along the very bottom, I can type things within there, so I could start a conversation. So I could say, you know, something like, hello and welcome everyone to the team. And in the very bottom right corner, I've got the send button. I click onto this and it puts this message out there for everybody. Within the messages themselves, so I'm just going to move this for a moment, you'll see that I've got a reply option. So if you want to keep something within a general conversation, instead of just posting new messages over and over and over again, it may be that you want to reply to something within this thread. So, you know, I might reply to my own message in this case. And if I click onto reply, you know, imagine I was somebody else and I could do, hello, Bob. And you can see it keeps it within there. You can see that Wendy has also just responded as well. So Wendy says, hi, Bob, thanks for inviting me to join this team. No problem. So I might go in here and say, you know, no problem. Spelling is appalling, but you can see I can reply to something and keep it all within this thread. On a message itself, if I hover over my message, you can see that I can attach things like smiley faces, thumbs up. So, you know, I'm going to add a laughing smiley face to Wendy's message. I've also got a three-dot option. So if I just click on this one over here, where I can save a message, which would allow me to view it a little bit later. I can also do things like edit and delete a message as well. You can only edit and delete your own messages. So I can't delete Wendy's message, but I could delete any of Bob's messages because, you know, I'm Bob in this team. If you delete a message, very much like WhatsApp, when you delete a message, it will just pop up with a bit of text that will say, you know, Bob has deleted this message or this message has been deleted. So there is a deleted message, but, you know, because it's been deleted, you won't know what it ever said. If I go back into the very bottom of the screen and click into the conversation area, you can see that I've also got an option at the very bottom to format some text. So if I was to click onto the format button, it now opens up that that text box, into a slightly bigger space. And now I could type something in here. So I could say something along the lines of maybe let's all meet for lunch today, perhaps. And you've also got options to, so I might even give it a subject. So we'll say lunch. And I've got a few formatting options. So I can do things like, you know, make things bold. I can make things italic. I can underline as well. You've got some paragraph options. You've also got the highlighter pen. So if I click on the highlighter, I could also highlight stuff as well. you know, you can just kind of format and play with your text a little bit. I've also got the option within here. So if I click back onto that format option, you see where it says new conversation. Well, if I click on new conversation and choose announcements instead, you know, I could say something like, you know, chocolate available downstairs. And, you know, if we were in the office environment, then, you know, I imagine everyone would be running downstairs to grab some chocolate. I can make an announcement, and I could also add some information over here. And I could type a message. So I could say, you know, go claim your free chocolate. You know, free chocolate, I guess, is never a bad thing. So could make an announcement, and then everyone can see. And you can see on the right-hand side, I've got a little announcement icon. Wendy's asking me, you know, replying to let's all meet for lunch today, where's best to meet? I don't know. I mean, if you're anything like me, when lockdown is over and McDonald's has finally opened again, then I'd imagine we'll probably head to McDonald's and have lunch over there. So, you know, all sorts of ways that we can interact with each other in this conversation. If I go down to the very bottom, you can also see along the bottom, I've got the option to attach a file. So if I choose to attach a file, I'm going to click onto the little attachment icon, and I could attach something from OneDrive, I could attach a recent file or something that I've got within Teams. But if I just click onto upload from my computer, then I've got this folder, Teams webinar, and I might want to attach some of the files within here. So perhaps training newsletter, and click open. You can see it just takes a moment to upload it into the conversation. So now that the green bar is gone, I've uploaded it into the conversation, and now I'm going to send that message. So now that link to that file is available, but just remember at the very top of the screen, you've also got this Files tab, and if I click onto Files, you can see that the link to the training newsletter is available within there as well. If I just go back to the posts side of Teams for a moment, if I go back into the bottom, I've also got the option here to attach things like emoticons, so huge library within there. We've also got GIFs, so we can see that Wendy's posting some GIFs now, enjoying her chocolate. So clearly got downstairs before everybody else and grabbed some of that chocolate, and she's very, very, very welcome to that. If I click onto the GIF, within here, you can search for things. So, you know, when this Teams, everyone gets their hands on it for the first time, you'll notice that lots and lots and lots and lots of your conversations will have lots and lots and lots and lots of these funny pictures. So I can see there's some really awesome ones in there at the moment. So thanks for your service. Also got this one of these very cute dogs in masks. If you type in a subject matter, so I don't know, if we type in funny, for example, loads and loads and loads of great ones in here. One of my personal favorites, this dog dancing, absolutely hilarious. And you got loads and loads and loads of things that you can search for in there. So not going to go into too much detail. I'm sure you all get what I'm talking about. And I'd imagine when you all start using Teams for the first time, this is what your posts feed will look like for at least for the first couple of hours of having Teams. But, you know, got to have lots of fun these days as well. Anyway, going down here, you've also got the option to do things like create stickers. Again, more to do with pictures, and anyone who enjoys memes, there's loads of them within here. Ones that I'm sure you've all recognized, like the Success Kid. You know, again, don't need to talk much about memes, but lots of them available within there. Now, one of the other things that we can do is we can also start a meeting from within the conversation. So you'll notice along the very bottom, there's this little video camera icon. Now, if I was to click on the video camera for Meet Now, it asks me to add a subject to my meeting. So this would be, instead of me scheduling a meeting in the calendar, I'm just creating a meeting that I want to start now, and everyone within my team will be able to see this meeting and join it. So if I add a subject to the meeting, so I'm just going to call this perhaps training meeting. And you can see along the very bottom, I mean, I don't have a webcam plugged into this computer. I've got 4 audio devices, but don't have a webcam for some reason. But if I did, I could automatically switch that on. I could also jump into the scheduling side of things, but again, don't need to worry about that one for now. And when I click on to Meet Now, it's going to start that meeting. So I can see it now starts that meeting. In a moment, if I just move this over here, I can see on the right-hand side, there's suggestions of people to invite to the meeting, although the link is available for them within Teams and they could join the meeting that way. If I was to click onto any of the 3 dots, so I can see that Wendy has now joined the meeting and is in the meeting with me. We could also copy the link info and then paste it into an email and invite somebody external. Again, just be warned, you may or may not be able to invite external people based on your organization's team settings. So that's something to double check with your IT department or management first. Also within here, I can see that I can click onto the 3 dots next to Jane. I could ask her to join and send her a prompt for her to join this meeting. If I close this people area in the top right corner and just focus on this bar of options over here, you can see that there's a timer. I could also mute myself. I could also do things like share my screen. So if I click onto share, I can then share any of the things that I've got open, like the PowerPoint presentation. I could share my entire screen, but I'm sure you can all understand because I'm using GoToWebinar to deliver this training and I'm sharing that with you. I can't share within a share within a share. So forgive me for not being able to click onto this, but it would just allow me to do what I'm doing with you right now, but through Teams. I can also bring up a whiteboard. So on the very right-hand side, I could bring up a whiteboard, which would just be a big white space that everyone could draw and put things into. I've also got the option to show conversation. So we could have a meeting chat on the right-hand side. And just remember, everyone within this meeting could see this. So I could say, you know, something like, "Hi, Wendy," and post that into the meeting chat on the right-hand side. I could also bring back that participants window, and that will show me who's in the meeting and who isn't, and I can switch between the 2. And within the 3 dots, I can also do things like record a meeting as well. And if I choose to record a meeting, then you'll see at the very top, it prompts me to let people know that they're being recorded. Because, you know, especially nowadays, it's a really good idea, sort of GDPR-wise and privacy-wise as well, let people know that they're being recorded. So I can see this meeting's been recorded. And once I hang up on the meeting, so once, you know, maybe myself and Wendy have had the meeting, I could click on to hang up. I leave the meeting. The meeting is still going. So just looking at my screen, you can see that the timer is still counting down because the meeting is still going. It's only once everyone has left the meeting that the meeting is fully over. So if I've now left the meeting and I can see that Wendy's still in there, if I wanted to rejoin the meeting, I could simply click on to join and I would join that meeting. And then once Wendy leaves the meeting, then the meeting will be over. And I can also rate the call quality as well. And what will happen in a moment is that recording of that meeting will be created and then it will be available for us to watch and posted within the conversation as well. So you can see it tells me recording has stopped, saving recording to Microsoft Stream. And if you're wondering what Microsoft Stream is, Microsoft Stream is just your Office 365 application for watching and streaming media. You know, very much like you've got Windows Media Player on your computer. So, you know, if you play an MP3 or watch a video, it will normally open it in your Windows Media Player. Within Teams or within Office 365, you've got something called Microsoft Stream, and any recordings or videos or anything that you watch, any digital content you watch within Office 365 will just be shown through that. But anyway, that will take a couple of minutes because it just needs to create that file for us in the background. Now, one of the other cool things within the conversation, so you may or may not have used this feature before, is you've got the option to mention somebody. So if I wanted to mention perhaps Wendy, if I type in @ you can see it pops up with suggestions, and I'm going to pick Wendy, and then I'm going to put, you know, congratulations on claiming the chocolate. And I could post that there. And because I've mentioned Wendy, not only will she get a notification within Teams, which she would do in general, but she'll also receive an email letting her know that she's been mentioned within this particular team. So if you want to kind of get someone's attention within the team, then you can mention that person. And we can see that, you know, Wendy was very, very fast. So I might choose to, you know, smile or like that or react to that post. But as I've mentioned Wendy, she would also get an email within her Outlook letting her know that I've mentioned her within this team. So very simply, I would just use the @ symbol, and then I could even mention Jane, and then I could say, I could say something to Jane. So hello, Jane. And I can post a message, and now Jane would get a notification of that message. So within the conversation, very much like almost any instant messenger, you can see that we're able to write to each other, reply to each other's posts. We're able to like and save posts as well. We can create an impromptu meeting, and there'll be a link for everyone within the conversation itself. We can also post pictures and make announcements. We can also attach files as well. Now, to get back to the files for a moment, at the very top, if I click into the files section, I can see within here, I've now got this training newsletter. Now, if I wanted to open this training newsletter, if I click on the 3 dots and then go to open, it gives me 3 options. Now, open in Word Online will take me into a browser and then into the Word Online. If I do open in Word, if I've got Word installed on my computer, it will open it in the desktop version of Word. However, you can also directly edit in Teams. So if I click to edit in Teams, it now opens up this newsletter. And hopefully in a moment, Wendy can click into this as well. You can see it opens up the document, and looking along the very top, you don't have every command within Microsoft Word, but we've got lots of them. So I can now begin to edit and work on this newsletter. So I could maybe type some information, or I could maybe change some of the text. I've also got options to, do some formatting. And if I click through here, I could insert pictures and tables. I can play with the layout and the margins. I can do a lot of editing within here. But most importantly, I can collaborate on this document. So notice the little placeholder for Wendy. Now that she's editing this part of the document, it's letting me know that she's here. In the top right corner, I can see that Wendy is in this document as well. And if I hover my mouse cursor over her initials, it tells me Wendy is on page 3. And if I click on go to the location, it will physically take me to where Wendy currently is in the document. If we wanted to have a conversation, we could call each other within Teams, but we've also got the option for conversation. And if I click on conversation, then within here I could say, hi Wendy, please could you edit page 2? And then I could post messages to Wendy. So as we're both collaborating on this at the same time, we could post messages to each other on the right-hand side. We could also call each other as well if we really wanted to. But we're able to interact with each other, and this is much, much, much quicker than, the old-fashioned way of leaving a comment, then having the person open the document separately and check the comment. We're able to do all of these things together almost at the same time. So it's a really, really, really great way to work on documents together. And it doesn't just have to be a Word document. This could also be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be a presentation. It could be almost anything. that you could post within here. Once I'm ready to leave the document, I can click onto close, and close will take me out of that document. If I want to create a quick link to this document, if I click on the three dots, do you see there's an option that says make this a tab? If I make this a tab, you can see that now along the very top within this channel, training newsletter is a tab. So even while we're within the post typing to each other, instead of going into files and opening the newsletter that way, you can very simply click on the newsletter tab at the very top and just go directly into it. And similarly for anyone who's a member of this team. If I click into the plus at the very top, so if I wanted to add something like a website, for example, could click onto website, and within here it says, what is the tab name going to be? So we're going to put NHS homepage. Again, let me fix my spelling a little bit. And now when I go to paste the URL, you need to make sure that you're using URLs that begin with HTTPS. So it's just to make sure that you're using, a secure and trustworthy website with the 2 forward slashes. So I'm just going to go back to this over here, and I'm just going to copy the NHS website link, and then I'm just going to paste that into there. And when I now hit save, it'll take a moment to set up, and you can see it's posted that tab along the very top. I could now scroll through this, I could follow the links, and I could just use this like I use my web browser to go to a website. It's fantastic. So websites that my team might need to use on a regular basis, we could just post links to them up over here. Now, just to sort of bring your attention to a few more features of Teams. So just on the left-hand side, things like chat, like I was saying earlier, within the chat, I can go to contacts and I can find contacts within the organization, or I can create contact groups. So if I wanted to add maybe Wendy to this contact group, I could just find Wendy, click add, create a contact list. Wendy and I can then type messages to each other. We could also make a call to each other by clicking on the phone icon in the top right corner, or I could share the screen with her. So very much like the meeting we did earlier, it would open up a meeting window and we could then share a file with her. But again, we could also do that within the Teams. We could also attach a file into here as well. We'd then have the Files tab along the very top, and we could work in it that way. So hopefully you can all see that many of the features I'm showing you that are available within the Teams side of things are also available within the chat side of things as well. If I go to calendar, I can schedule meetings within here. And just to show you one thing about scheduling meetings, when you go to schedule a meeting, because it's all sort of tied up and synchronized with your Microsoft Outlook calendar, any meeting that you create will also go into your Outlook calendar. But if I give this meeting a title, so perhaps we're going to have a webinar review a little bit later on today, I could add an attendee. So I could click onto add attendees, and I could then maybe add Wendy as an attendee. But if I wanted to add an entire channel, then you can see down within here, it lists all my teams. So I could go to my MS Teams training, and maybe I'm going to invite the whole general channel to this meeting as well. I could then set a time. So maybe we're going to meet at 4 o'clock, and we're going to meet for 30 minutes. And, you could then add location information. You could also add information about the meeting. So we're just going to review today's webinar, perhaps. And then in the very top right corner, I've got the option to send. And when I click on to send, not only does it create that in my calendar, but it will also send a link out or send an email inviting them to that meeting. Everyone that's within that channel, and Wendy as well will get an email about that too. If I go back to the team itself, and I go back to the post, Can see that because I've invited the channel, that also comes up as a post as well within the post side of this particular team or channel, should I say. So everything within Teams is pretty much integrated with everything else. On the very left-hand side, I've also got files. When I click into files, files will display a list of all the files that I have access to in all the teams that I'm a member of. So within here, you can see that I've got the training newsletter that I updated earlier. And on the right-hand side, it tells me it's located in the MS Teams training team in the general channel. And for every one of the files that gets uploaded into any of the teams that you're a member of, you'll see this populate over here. So instead of going into each individual team's files, you could just click onto files on the left-hand side, and it would list all the files that you have access to from all the teams that you're a member of. And just one or two other things for this webinar. So Planner, I mean, very quickly, if you did want to have a play or create something like a plan, if I'm within a team and then within a channel, if I go up to the plus at the very top, then within here, I've also got the Planner application as one of the many applications that we could add. So Planner, you could use an existing plan. So if you're planning the similar events on a regular basis, you're not going to want to recreate the plan each time. You could just use an existing plan. But we don't have that at the moment. So we might have perhaps a training event. And we're just going to hit save. Now, the way that plan works is these general column headers are called buckets. So I've got to do, then over here I might have during event, and then I might create another one. So post event. And then the idea is that I add tasks within these buckets. So to do, if I go to add tasks, might be invite people to attend. Because if we have an event and nobody attends, then it's not really worth it, is it? So we're going to have invite people to attend. Set due date. You don't have to do this, but maybe I'm going to say this needs to be done by next Friday. And I might assign this to myself. And I'm also going to assign it to Wendy. So you can assign things to more than one person. And I'm going to add that task. You can see the task now exists underneath. If I click onto the three dots of the task, you could also do things like assign more people to it. You could also move the task to a different bucket. If I click onto the task itself, I get more information about this task where I can set things like priority. I can also type some notes. I can also add attachments and create checklists within this task. If I come out of this, as I'm then creating these tasks and this populates, so let's say during event, we're going to have one more task. We're going to have maybe meet and greet. And I'm going to assign this to myself. Always enjoy meeting new people, and maybe Jane as well. So myself and Jane are going to focus on this. And then we might assign another one. So we're going to have introduction speech. And this one we're going to assign to Wendy. And not Jane. We're just going to have Wendy for this one. And we're going to add the task. And anyway, we could populate all these buckets with tasks. And as we do so, and as time goes on and we're going through these tasks, you can do things like mark tasks as complete. So if I open up this task and just move this to the right-hand side, within this task itself, you could add additional people and so on. But if I tick the box to mark it as complete, you can see it now appears with a strike-through effect to let me know that it's been completed. And if I go up to charts, for example, I can now see this dashboard has automatically populated itself. There was 3 tasks in total, 2 haven't been started, 1 has been completed, and I get a nice overview of everything that's going on in this particular plan. And on the right-hand side, you can see I've got that plan. I can hide and show different bits and pieces. I can also move things around. Really, 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 really fun and interactive. And a final thing I'm going to show you before I take some of your questions is at the very, very top, you've got the search bar. So the search bar is brilliant because it tells me type / or an @ symbol for a list of commands. So not only can I search for things in here, so if I type in, Wendy, I could find Wendy this way. If I type in the word Teams, you can see as I'm typing away, it finds everything that's got Teams in it within the search bar. But if I type in the / or an @ symbol, you can now see it pops up with lots and lots and lots of little shortcuts. So if I wanted to appear as busy, I could just type in / busy, and I could set my status to busy. If I do / and then I've got things like be right back, test call, I could make a test call, keys, so I can see keyboard shortcuts and it brings them all up. Really, 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 really cool. So once you have got your hands on Teams, or if you do so already, if you want to take a little bit of time to, become a keyboard shortcut expert, or get to the grips by using the / and learning some of these extensions, you can become an absolute whiz in Teams very, 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 very quickly. All right. So that kind of brings me to the end of everything I was going to show you in today's course. First and foremost, just before you all disappear, we're going to take some questions in a moment, and I just need to share some more information with you. Firstly, I just want to say I really hope you've all enjoyed today's session. I know a lot of people that have attended this course work in a lot of the organizations such as NHS, the police force, the councils, and all the frontline staff that are, really helping, well, not only the country, but the whole world to deal with what's going on at the moment. So from me personally and from all my colleagues at Scala and Premier IT, we really, really want to thank you for all the hard work and everything that you guys are doing at the moment. It really, 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 really means a lot to us. Just to share a bit of information with you very quickly as well. So if I just switch back to the presentation very quickly, we will send you an email that contains all of this information, but you'll find that if you go to our website, you can register for a resources pack. You'll also have a link to the Premier IT website, and it will take you to a section where you can share content with other people that are on this session today. So it could be that you maybe find out some very useful information about Teams or about anything really, and you want to share with your colleagues. You can and share with everyone else that has attended today's course. You'll have that option there. I'll take your questions in a moment, but just before I do so, please remember that before you leave this session, or upon leaving, should I say, it will give you the option to fill out a quick questionnaire. I'd really, really, really appreciate it if you could just take the 2 minutes to answer those few questions. We'd be very, very, very grateful for that. So let's take some questions now. So just going to have a look into the chat. So nothing in the chat, but looking through the questions area. So I'm just looking at a window in my screen because I can see that Lisa has also answered loads and loads and loads of these questions. So just having a look within here. Let's try and make this a little bit bigger. Sorry, I know you can't see it on my screen, but the window that it shows me the questions in is tiny, so I'm just trying to make it really, really, really big. So just to take some of the questions within here, let's see. Can retention for chat content be set? So to answer that question, I mean, that's not something that the everyday sort of user will be able to do, but from a kind of administration standpoint, when your Teams is being set up, it'd be best to really speak to your IT administrators, as I'm sure there'll be an option there for them to control how long that is. I know that for some of the clients that we work with, particularly like with a lot of like banks and legal companies, yeah, because of freedom of information and retention policies, they have to keep, I think it's up to 5 years or something like that, keep some information. So I'd imagine that there is an option for that. But I'm not super familiar with Teams from a sort of IT administration standpoint, more from a user perspective. So I'd recommend please get in touch with your IT department for that. Got an option, got a question as well about how do you clear down some of the chat. So, I mean, the chat itself, you can delete your own messages, and whenever you open the chat, it will show you the most recent messages. In terms of kind of clearing away older messages and so on, I don't really think that there's an option for you to do that, but you'll find that the SharePoint space that's been saved to, that's part of Office 365, you have something crazy like an unlimited cloud storage for that, hosted by Microsoft. So don't need to worry too much about that. And yeah, like Lisa has just said as well, having been able to access older information is great, because you can then find something that, you'll think, oh, I remember when Wendy sent me that like 2 weeks ago, and then you can scroll your way back and you can find the information that way. So if you're worried about it from a sort of memory perspective, don't worry too much about that. I'm pretty sure that the Microsoft cloud storage is unlimited. Yep, so just looking at one of the other questions. So yes, Rosella, you will get an email from ourselves, and it will give you a link to download the recording. I'd imagine it's not something you'll get immediately. You'll probably get it over the next day or two. But yes, you will have a recording of this session for yourself, which would be pretty cool. So I got a question from scrolling up from Harsha about setting up a webinar. Oh, I can see that Lisa's answered that, so that's cool. And also just another question from Paula, which Lisa has answered, about how to set up a group video chat within Teams. So very much like we were looking at earlier with the meeting, you could either put the meeting in the conversation itself just by clicking onto the Meet Now option and starting an impromptu meeting. Alternatively, you could go to Calendar, click on New Meeting in the top right corner, and you could schedule the meeting that way. And when people join the meeting, as long as they've got a webcam, they'd be able to, click OK, and when they open the meeting, it will show their face and their video, or whatever they've got on their webcam. So yep, as long as they've got a webcam and you create that meeting, and you can add a channel over here as well, like we were doing earlier. So if I wanted to invite everyone within a particular channel, I could open that team, pick that channel, and it would send that invite to everyone in that channel. So yeah, as easy as that. So just looking at a question from Martin as well. So saying that you've just created a channel, but you can't seem to add anyone as it doesn't recognize anyone. So you should be able to add people from within your organization that are a member of that team. So as long as they're members of the team itself, then you should be able to add them into the channel. Sometimes you need to type out their full name, because you'll find that if you type in part of their name, if for some reason sometimes it just won't, like I might type in WEND and it won't come up with Wendy until I've typed in Wendy. So it could just be needing to type out their full name. But if that still doesn't work, it could also just be a synchronization error, in which case I'd just say restart Teams, and that should work fine. Or just make sure that they're members of that particular team. So again, that'd be something that you can speak to IT about if it's still not working. But yep, as long as they're members of the team, try typing out their full name, and that should solve that problem. And if I just go back to Teams for a moment over here. So sorry, I've got so many things on the screen. So let's discard this. When you click on the 3 dots by a team, let's move this as well. So if I go to this MS Teams training, for example, and if I click on something like Manage Team, it shows me who all the members of that team are. So you can check within there who the current members of that team are. But if you can see the people within there and you're typing their name and it's not coming up, then try just closing and opening Teams again. Or if not, then have a word with IT. But that should work just fine. So I've got a question as well from Pamela about how do you know if people have read your conversation? So I guess unlike WhatsApp, where you get the 2 blue ticks most of the time that let you know that everyone has read your that particular part of your conversation. I mean, I guess there's not really anything in Teams that will tell you that everyone has read that conversation, but it would be more so, it's like a trust thing. You're hoping that if you want to get someone's attention, let's say, then if I really want to make sure that somebody's read that message, I would probably at them, and then when I at them in that particular part of the conversation, then I know that once I send that message, they will definitely get an email of that as well. So if they haven't read the message, I guess it means that they're not reading the emails and they're not logging onto Teams, which you'd hope that, from a professional standpoint, they would be doing that. So yeah, unfortunately, there's no like indication physically to let you know that they've read them. I guess it's more of a trust thing, hoping that they have read them. All right. So yeah, I mean, if anyone has any additional questions, then do feel free to type them in. So I've got one from Paulina. So yeah, I mean, yeah, they'll get an email with the notification and the message as well. So yeah, I mean, you could just use the email itself, but you'll find that the email that they get that you've added them will have a link directly within the email to take them into Teams and directly to that message. So yeah, you'll see it's fantastic. You'll get an email saying, this particular channel has mentioned you, and click here to go into the team and respond to that message. Because ideally, you're not going to want to respond to it within Outlook. By using more teams, you're kind of cutting down the need to use Outlook. I would say the app mentions are useful for people whose attention that you want to get. So, for example, using myself as an example, because I travel around a lot, I may not check my Teams on my phone very, very regularly because while I'm out and about delivering training courses, I might just quickly check my emails in the middle of the day. And if I see that I've been mentioned in something, someone's trying to get my attention, then I'll log into Teams and have a look at it that way. So now that I'm, working from home at the moment and I've got Teams open all the time, then I'm probably using Outlook less because I'm communicating with my colleagues via Teams. But yeah, I mean, if I'm out and about and perhaps I'm only kind of checking my phone now and again, then mentions is a good way to kind of get someone's attention in that way. So let's have a look. some of questions. So let's see from Paula, can you chat on teams with people outside your organization? Yeah, you can. Again, it will be more so if this option is enabled for your organization, because again, some people that some organizations in particular that deal with very sensitive and private information, sometimes they just don't allow external people into their teams at all. But yeah, I mean, if you can do that, if your organization allows you to do that, then yeah, absolutely, you can add external people into a team, so they get added as a guest user. And once they're part of that team or they've been invited, then yep, you'd be able to interact with them. They're able to join your meetings. They can look at the files. Yeah, absolutely everything. So yep, you can. And as Lisa has also pointed out, they don't necessarily need to have Teams either. They will follow the link and they'd be able to access the online version of Teams as well. So yeah, absolutely. And sorry, just one from Daniel as well. Can a recorded meetings in MS Stream be downloaded? So yeah, so technically what happens is even Streams will be the application you use to view that particular recording, but the recording will be stored as a file in the SharePoint for this team. So like everything else in SharePoint, you can download a copy of that file. So yeah, through the SharePoint side of it, yes, you could. But that will also depend on things like permissions as well, because different people in different organizations will have different levels of permission also. But technically, yes, the physical file is stored on SharePoint, as is everything that you do in Office 365, sort of technically speaking, and there'll be a downloadable version of it there. All right. All right, so I guess that probably kind of brings us to the end, as there doesn't seem to be any other additional questions. I'll stay on the line for a couple of minutes, so if anyone does have any additional questions, then do feel free to ask those questions or pop them into the chat or the questions area within GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar. But like I was saying, if I just bring your attention back to the PowerPoint presentation. So thank you very, very, very much for joining us today. Really hope you've all enjoyed it. Keep your eyes peeled on your email where you'll get links to all these wonderful things. So you'll have a option to access the recording of this as well. So you can maybe watch it back with your colleagues or sort of go through it and digest the information at your own pace as well. And please, 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 upon signing out, take a moment to fill out our quick questionnaire. Really, really appreciate your feedback. So yeah, so from myself and Lisa and everyone at Scala and Premier IT, thank you very much all attending today. Have a lovely, lovely, lovely day and a lovely Easter weekend as well. And I wish everyone good health as well. So all the best. Thank you very, very, very much.